Hello, Bob Wells here, and welcome back to the Undercurrent Stories podcast, where we dive deep into the hidden depths of our world, one fascinating guest at a time. In today's show, we have a true legend of the guitar world joining us, the one and only Gordon Giltrap. For over 5 decades, Gordon has captivated audiences with his signature blend of folk, rock, classical and progressive styles. From his breakout success with Heartsong to his countless albums, collaborations and contributions to the British music, his unique guitar playing has inspired generations of guitarists and continues to do so. And here's something special that we've got for you. On the 10th of June, Gordon is currently holding an exclusive auction, offering up a selection of some of his personal guitars, each with its own story, history and connection to his incredible career. We'll be talking about what inspired him to be part with some of those treasured instruments and what they mean to him. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's explore the music, the journey, and the soul behind the sound. That is Gordon Giltrap. Hello and welcome to the show, Gordon.
Good afternoon, Bob. Nice to talk to you.
It's great to have you on this lovely Saturday afternoon. I think summer's on its way now.
Yes, it's great. It's really warm. I'm speaking to you from Evesham, which is kind of on the border of the Cotswolds and Warwickshire and Worcestershire. And it's beautiful. It's lovely. Weather's lovely.
So before we talk about the guitar auction itself, which I'm really keen to hear about, could you just tell us a bit about yourself, your life growing up, and how you became interested in music, Gordon?
Well, it goes back. I've just turned, even I can't get my head around this actually, Bob. I've just turned 77. So I've been in the music business since 1966, and I signed my first recording contract with a label called Transatlantic Records. And my first album came out in 69. And for many years, I was kind of associated with the folk scene, mainly because I played acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
But in 1976, I did an album called Visionary, which changed all that, which then put me in the bracket of progressive rock, which I found a bit of music at the time. But and then I did an album called Perilous Journey, which featured a major hit for me called Heartsong. And then after that, I did an album called Fear of the Dark, then an album called The Peacock Party. So those 4 albums really would be known nationally, I think, to a lot of your listeners.
Yes, and I think many listeners, particularly sort of my age group in our mature years, will remember the song that was used for the holiday programme. That's
correct, yeah.
For many years that was used, I believe.
Yeah, it was, about 10 years, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, going into the music scene in the 1960s and becoming famous in the 1970s, I mean, it was a golden age for music. And I know, it was they were my formative years and many other people. What was it actually like in the 60s, growing up in that period of change?
Well, it's interesting because, like, when you're part of that, you just accept it for what it is.
Yeah.
It's only when you look back, you think, wow, that was amazing. And one has numerous stories, people that I started out with who then became huge names. I used to do a Wednesday night residency with Mike Oldfield, for example, when he was 14.
Wow.
When he was in a duo with his sister called Sally, and they were called the Sally Angie.
Yeah.
I also used to share the same night with John Martin. And it was incredible. The music scene was a golden age, but you don't know that when you're living through it. It's only when you look back. But the music scene was a lot different then. There were proper record companies that would work with an artist over a number of albums. Work was plentiful. It's difficult to categorize people then, but to me, the whole music scene was an incredible melting pot of influences.
Yeah,
all the way through. For me, my influences started out way back with the legendary Hank Marvin with the Shadows, and then of course the Beatles came along and changed all that. And then I got seriously into acoustic music, folk music, and esoteric artists like Bert Jansch and John Renbourn and Davy Graham. These were kind of groundbreaking artists that changed the face of music, and particularly acoustic music, and had a massive influence on many rock artists, particularly Jimmy Page.
Yes.
I mean, Jimmy Page was a huge Bert Jansch fan. And subsequently, as years have gone, I found out that I've been an influence, which is interesting because we're all standing on the shoulders of giants,
Yes.
But then as you go on, you think, I've been around a long time, and I'm very very grateful to still be here and making music, because a lot of my contemporaries sadly aren't here anymore. So when you've been around that long, it's I kind of say it with a smile on my face. If you hang around long enough, you become a legend.
And what was it about the guitar that attracted you? What was it? Just sort of the in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, was it that was the most popular instrument to be playing, like Hank Marvin? Is that what it was, rather than say a keyboard or doing vocals?
No, it wasn't that at all. I first heard a guitar when I was about 8, 9 or 10 years old. A kid up the road had one, and I just instantaneously fell in love with the sound. I thought it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard, and I wanted to make that sound. And I started off like many kids today with the ukulele, and then progressed with an instrument that had 6 strings, because the ukulele's only got 4. And then I was stumped, and I thought, what do I do with the other 2? So the guitar came with a book which showed you how to tune it, and it had those little chord boxes that we still use. And I learned to play my first chord. So I've never had a single lesson. I did everything wrong. And Bob, I'm a prime example of somebody that did everything wrong, but somehow it worked out right. And I'm still in wonder of it. I really am. So how did this happen? How did I become this person? How did these things evolve? And it's a very magical thing. And I'm very grateful, thankful, and quite frankly, humbled by it.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly got. I've seen. I think I mentioned before we spoke on the interview that I've seen you twice, and what I like about your style is the use of, particularly on the delay, and the fingerstyle technique that you've got, and how you blend.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. The delay pedal is wonderful. It's a very creative tool, and I've written a few pieces using that. So it's good to embrace technology as long as you can use it as a creative tool. And my fingerstyle is not fingerstyle. I play the guitar completely wrong. I just use a thing called a plectrum, which is a pick on the right hand, and my little finger. That's all I use. And it's the way I taught myself. I thought, how can I play 2 notes at the same time? And somehow the little finger did the job, and it stayed that way. And it's all wrong. I don't play. I mean, in some ways, I'm an imposter when it comes to guitar technique, but I've made it work for me, and it's given me a sound. Unwittingly, I've created the Gordon Giltrap sound, which is lovely. I don't know how that happened, but it just evolved organically.
Is it the little finger that gives you those little bits where you can go particularly fast? Does it help you go faster?
Yeah, it does. Using a plectrum, you can suddenly go from very heavy chords to delicate picking. But if you are exclusively a fingerstyle guitar player, you can't quite get the same attack as you would if you used a plectrum. Yeah. You've only got to listen to the mighty Pete Townshend to hear what can be done in the hands of a great master of the plectrum guitar, although he's a great fingerstyle player. It's very powerful and very exciting.
I mean, when I get I'm a bit young to remember it, although I was I was a sort of young child at the time. But I remember in the 60s, you had this sort of folky type of sound going on, and then Hendrix came along. Were you ever attracted to the more heavier style of rock playing like Hendrix?
No, I was attracted to the playing of Peter Green.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Of Fleetwood Mac, and I was attracted to Peter not because just of his guitar playing that was so soulful and lyrical and came from somewhere else, but his creativity. The man was a genius. Sadly, it burned out very quickly and tragically, but in a very short space of time, the man had written Man of the World, Green Manalishi, Albatross, Oh Well, Need Your Love So Bad. Just genius. It just poured out of him.
Yeah.
So I was attracted to Peter Green and the way he played the guitar, his soulful bluesy playing, very lyrical, very melodic.
Most of your music that people will be familiar with they're instrumental. But having done a little bit of research, I do note that at one time you used to sing. What is it about instrumental music that you sort of convey more than what vocals can't say?
Well, it came about, funnily enough, I looked on YouTube today and I found a very early 1973 clip of me on the Old Grey Whistle Test where I'm singing a song called When I See My Son. And when I look at that stuff and hear my voice, I get incredibly embarrassed because I don't think I ever really found my own voice. I was trying to sound like somebody else, be somebody else. But when I played the guitar, I was completely me.
Yes.
And there was a record executive at the time called Peter Robinson. He said your songs they're very pleasant. He said, but when it really happens is when you play the guitar. And I thought, yeah, I guess he's right. So from that point on, I just stopped singing and just concentrated on instrumental music. And if I kept singing, I'd probably be a very wealthy rock star today. But you can only follow your heart and do what's in your heart. And no regrets, really, because I think it's touched a lot of people, changed a few people's lives, in actual fact. You never sort of think that would happen. But, yeah, I'm very grateful. I don't think I would have changed any of it.
No. And I've noticed that you use a lot of different tunings. Is there one particular tuning that is the Gordon Giltrap tuning that you'd like to?
No, there's not. Well, there's not a tuning that hasn't been invented by somebody else.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a Gordon Giltrap tuning. I have lots of tunings that I love and I use to create other tunes with. Again, open tuning is a tool. It's a creative tool to write more tunes. And what you can get with open tuning is a lot of sustain, a lot of open strings, and it becomes very, very melodic, very ethereal, and very haunting.
And you've collaborated with many artists over the years. Can you share? Yeah, can you share some of the memorable experiences from those collaborations? And are there any in particular that you really value?
Well, I think the one. Well, I've just actually collaborated with a very dear friend of mine who I'm very proud to share with you. His name is Nicholas Hooper, but the world will know him as the man who wrote the music for 2 Harry Potter films.
Oh, right.
But outside of that, he wrote music for about 250 movies. The man's a genius. He also happens to be a great guitar player.
Yeah.
And we've just finished a duo album that's due out probably in September. And that was really a wonderful thing to be involved with. I've worked with Brian May. I did a duo album with the great jazz guitarist Martin Taylor. I think the one I enjoyed the most is the one I've recently done, but one that I'm very proud of, and it's just now been re-released. It's an album I did with Rick Wakeman called From Brush and Stone, and that's just been re-released by Gonzo Records on double vinyl. And it was a wonderful thing for me to work with probably the greatest keyboard player in the history of rock music, which is Rick, of course. And I spent about 5 or 6 months working on my second guitar parts for him. And as far as I was concerned, I created near perfect parts of that, which I'm very proud of. You know, I couldn't think of a wrong note on that album. And it's great that a friend of mine, Rob Ayling, has got this label called Gonzo Records, have just re-released it. If your listeners are interested, the details are on my website, which is www.giltrap.co.uk. You go onto the homepage, you can click onto that to the link to get a copy. And I say it's just been released. It's beautifully presented. It's far superior to when it first came out. And of course, vinyl, I'm sure you will agree, sounds mighty. It just sounds so much better. It's warmer. There's more clarity.
Yeah.
And there's been no expense spared on this release because both of the vinyl copies were transparent vinyl, double gatefold sleeve, beautifully presented. And I spent a very enjoyable afternoons co-signing it with Rick. So we both signed the album. So people who want an exclusive signed a double album of From Brush and Stone, then here's your chance.
Well, we'll put that on the episode show notes, Gordon. But playing the guitar itself, I mean, I play the guitar and I go through periods where I don't touch it, probably because I'm not a professional musician. But I almost go off it, and then I come back to it, and I get obsessed by it again. What about yourself? Being a musician, do you play your guitar every day? Do you ever go off it? How does it work?
Here's the thing: I've recently moved house, and I spent many weeks packing boxes, lugging stuff around, doing a bit of DIY.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my guitar playing had to be put to the wayside. So now I'm getting back into it again, and building up my calluses and becoming Gordon Giltrap the guitarist once more, as opposed to Gordon Giltrap the house mover. Yeah. But yes, if you don't play, the fingers get very soft, and it does start to hurt the fingertips. You have to build up these calluses. Otherwise, those steel strings are going to cut into the flesh. They can hurt. make your fingers very sore.
You've had a very long and successful career. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way, Gordon?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned from my own playing is not to play so damn fast. Music's not about speed. It's not about technique. That's one of the biggest lessons that I learned. There are a lot of fine guitar players around, a lot of clever guitar players, right? But clever guitar playing doesn't appeal to me. Melodic, well-constructed tunes appeal to me. Tunes that are written from the heart, that can really touch you in a deep, profound way that you can't even put into words. So that's what I learned. As a younger player, I mean, I was the fastest guitarist in the West, which was great.
Yeah.
I look back on it now, and I couldn't play like that now. It's too demanding. It's that thing of youth and intensity. I mean, it's like I saw a wonderful interview a few years back with Bob Dylan. And the interviewer asked him, he said, could you write stuff like that now? He said, no way, I couldn't. He said, it's of the moment.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of, in some ways, channel it or download it. And once you've captured that magic, it's like when you make a record. If you captured that record, the moment on record, you can't recreate it.
No.
Because all those elements come into play: the studio, the sound engineer, the musicians that are around you, the atmosphere at the time. It's like when you listen to great recordings, it's because everything was right to make that happen. All the stars aligned, and
yes.
It's a wonderful thing.
Hi, it's Bob here. Just a quick interlude. Hope you're enjoying this episode. And if you would like to hear more interesting interviews, we have over 120 episodes to date with many fascinating guests talking about a wide variety of topics which include music, history, philosophy, fitness, food and drink, adventure, contemporary culture, and many, many more. I'm sure there's something that you'd really enjoy. So all you need to do is just visit undercurrentstories.com or search Undercurrent Stories in any of the podcast platforms. And now back to the show. Yeah, I was listening to Travel Notes, the album that came out a couple of years ago with Chris McCormack. I mentioned it before we spoke on the interview, and the range that you do of some of those compositions. That's almost like a dance album.
Well, it is. The interesting thing about this, and this is really quite amusing, because I'd forgotten about that album, but it was certainly other things had come along. My life had changed. It was kind of, for me, put on the back burner because it wasn't commercially released. It was a library album purely for commercial use. But I did. This is the God's truth. I did a gig last year, and it was a very intimate gig in Cheltenham, and I walked into it was like a coffee bar there, and there was some music playing, and I was listening to it, and I thought, what is this? This is really nice. And I asked the girl behind the counter, I said, can you tell me what this music is? She said, oh, it's the guy who's playing tonight, called Giltrap. And she said, funnily enough, you look quite like him. And I said, are you sure? And she would come around, and there it was, Travel Notes.
Yeah.
And there was something about it, and I honestly didn't know it was me, but I liked it, and I thought there's something about it. It wasn't hardly any guitar at all. It was what Chris McCormack did. He took my basic guitar parts and put them through samples and time stretched them, filtered them, and created new music with them. And ironically, I was listening to it, and I thought, this is the sort of stuff I should be doing. I must find out who this person is, so maybe we could collaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear more of that, I have to say. It's a fantastic sound. I think I'll put the link on to that particular album on the show notes.
Lovely stuff on there.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote the tunes. He did the rest.
Yeah.
He just completely turned it around. It was good to do things outside of your comfort zone, you know?
Yes. I mean, were you actually working together in person on that one?
No, not at all.
No.
I just gave him the tracks, and at the end of the day, we had an album. And he said, well, I finished it. What do you think? And I thought it was great. It was basically a commission by a friend of mine called John Raitt, who ran the music library.
Yeah.
He said, I'd like to, you to collaborate with this guy, Chris McCormack. I think it'd be good for you. And I think musically it was successful. I really do. Sadly, I don't think it's been used the way it should do, because I think if you could get a really good advert for a car or for a holiday even, I think we'd all be making a few pennies out of it.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Yeah.
You don't do it for those reasons. That's for
No,
sure.
of course not. And I could hear, I could almost hear like a girl's voice singing along. Well, there wasn't one, but I could imagine a girl's voice singing along to it and put
It's got
perhaps,
great potential.
yeah, more of a bass drum on it, and it would sound fantastic.
Yeah.
And it had that ethereal bit as well that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. No, it's a lovely thing to listen to.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah. So what's next on the recording front? I know you obviously very busy. You were moving house and stuff, but what's next on the recording
The
side?
next on the recording front is I'm doing a tour in October for the whole of the month with the great jazz guitarist John Etheridge.
Yeah.
And we're going to put together a CD of probably the live show to basically sell at the gig. So that'll probably be the next recording project. But I'm writing stuff all the time, you know.
Yeah.
I've just had an EP release called Starfield, which I'm very, very thrilled with. Again, if you go onto my website and click on the link to Gonzo Records, it's on there along with the Brush and Stone album and Scattered Chapters and Starfield.
Yeah. And do you do your own recording, Gordon?
I used to.
Yeah.
I in my old house, I wouldn't call it a studio. I had a room where I record all my guitars, but I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to work alone anymore. I like working with other people.
Yes.
A very dear friend of mine, Mark Geyer, has set up his own studio at home, and it's just great to arrive at a studio and let someone else press the buttons and let me do my job, which is playing the instrument. And then you then get a kind of a feedback straight away from the guy you're working with, and it's a shared experience as opposed to making an executive decision outside of having the luxury of a producer or an external sound engineer to whether the track's any good or not.
Yeah.
So I've always followed my intuition because I've been doing it a long time now, so I know whether I've got it right or not. But it's also a question of whether I've got more than just the notes, whether I've created the right performance with the right emotion, you know. So I've done that for years. It's hard work. I'm very proud of what I've done. I look back on it and I think, how the hell did I do that?
What inspires you to? I've two questions really. What is the creative process like in terms of right? I've got something here, and what actually inspires you to do a particular song?
Well, what happens is you sit with the guitar. You sit with the guitar, and then suddenly something may arrive at the fingertips, and you go, "Oh, I think this is good." And then you say, "I don't record it. I write it down in what's known as tablature."
Yeah,
it's the guitar form of music. Really shows you exactly where the fingers go, and I write it down, and then I keep working at it to see where it's going to. And it's exciting because you don't know where it's leading you. The music's almost like telling you what you should do. It's all very mystical, really. I've always felt that when the good stuff comes, that it's come from somewhere else, and I feel as though I'm not responsible for it, which really people could interpret as being false modesty, but it's not. I do feel as though I'm channeling something. But my dear friend Pete Townsend, please excuse the name drop, but I said to him about this. I said, I feel as though somebody else has written this. He said, wait a minute. He said, let me turn this on his head. He said, it's your fingers, your muscle memory, and you're good at your job.
Yeah.
But I still feel that the inspiration is a mystical, magical thing, and I still don't know where it comes from. And I've spoken to a lot of people about this. There's a wonderful sculptress called Blondine Anderson, and she creates the most wonderful ceramics. And I said to her, well, how do you do this? She said, I just get a lump of clay, she said, and the next thing I know, I've made something. You know, and it's almost like tuning into the astral or the ether or something out there.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the good stuff happens, and you just have to follow it.
So it's not like you don't sort of wake up in the middle of the night with an inspiration like Paul McCartney did with some. It was yesterday, wasn't it? He did that apparently.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes, very rarely, as that happens. I did wake up once in the morning with a tune in my head, and I went to the guitar and I wrote something. But that doesn't happen with me. I just have to. The guitar gives me the inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, I always like David Bowie songs, where particularly good ones, where he's put in the diminished chords to sort of uplift it. which I found really interesting.
Oh, Bowie was a very underrated guitar player. David was. I had the great pleasure of. I didn't know him well, but I knew him. In fact, I opened for him on his first major tour with the Spiders from Mars. Lovely man.
Yeah.
And when you listen to Life on Mars and a lot of the other songs he wrote, which of course Rick Wakeman played along on those tracks, you know.
Yeah.
They're incredibly well constructed. They're beautifully constructed pieces, and the time changes and the chord sequence is excellent. But I think with Bowie, I think the image overshadowed to a degree his creativity.
Yes.
You know? But genius, without a doubt, genius.
Yeah. No, he certainly was. So, you're selling quite a number of your guitars. How many are you selling?
18.
18 guitars. And is this because of the house move?
Partly, yes. It's funny you should say that, Bob. Yeah, because I'm moving to a smaller house and I just haven't got space for them all. And a lot of them weren't being played. A lot of them really weren't being played. I thought, this is crazy. I've been carrying these guitars around with me for years. A lot of them do have sentimental value, but they're just things. You can't cling to the past. You must move forward.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to, you know, obviously I'm hoping to get good money for them. That's one of the main points. But it'd be nice if they went to a good home. Some of them are quite legendary pieces. You know, I've recorded certain outstanding tracks on albums in the past with them. But they're a mixed bunch. Some of them are expensive, some not so expensive. There's one guitar I bought from a car boot sale and created a hybrid guitar, and it sounded great. I used it on my Troubadour album. That was another standout album, actually. That's one of my all-time favorite albums, Troubadour. That was way back 1997, but that was just a beautiful experience. I think I was at the height of my powers then in terms of my tune writing.
Yeah. And are they all acoustic guitars, these?
Oh, yeah, all acoustic, yeah. All the guitars, no, some of them are electric.
Okay, yeah.
There's quite a bunch of electric ones, a couple of Strat copies, a beautiful arch top jazz guitar, a signature Gordon Giltrap Black Label guitar, which I just don't use anymore, you know. And they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
You can't keep them all. Maybe at one stage I was a collector, and when people would do interviews with me, it looked pretty cool, you know, Gordon Giltrap with all these wonderful guitars behind him. But it's all an ego trip to make other people think, gosh, he's so successful, he's got all these guitars. It's absolute nonsense, you know. Yeah. And they've got to be used. Yes. That's why I think also one's getting on in years. And I think the part of the reason why Knopfler sold all those instruments, he'd used them. You can't keep them locked up in cases, you know. They've got to go. Of course, with Knopfler and Dave Gilmour, they raised millions. Yeah. You know, I'd be lucky to raise quite a few hundred quid, I think. If I raised more, it'll be delightful. It'll be a bit of an ego massage, without a doubt, that people think that much of me that they want one of my instruments in their hands. So, but at the end of the day, you see, we don't own them. No. We don't own them. No. We don't own anything.
Custodians.
We're just custodians.
Yeah, yeah. And that's on the 10th of June. Where does that take place, Gordon?
It's Gardner Holgate. It's in Bath, which is outside Bath, Chippenham.
And will you be present at the auction?
No, I won't. No, I'm away on holiday. I don't think I'd want to be present there because it would be too nerve-wracking. So I'll just I'll get the news. Of course, you can go online. I might look at it online, but. You know, they've done me proud. They've done some beautiful photographs. They've done some lovely biographical material to each one, you know. So that's really, really nice. They're a good company. Yeah.
Well, just for listeners' sake, if you are listening to this before the 10th of June, it's the 10th of June 2025. And if you listen to it after, sorry, but it was the 10th of June 2025. Yes. So what's next?
What's next? Really, still sorting my house out. Still unpacking boxes, you know. Yeah. But also working with Rob Ayling, because a lot of my albums are coming out in box sets, which are very beautiful. And we're just trying to get all the contractual things sorted out with the labels that own these classic albums, so we can go ahead and reproduce them in limited edition numbers. So that's it's kind of my history, you know.
Yes.
It's what I'm leaving behind.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
my legacy.
Yes.
My legacy. All this stuff. I made a lot of albums.
You have, haven't you?
A lot of things a lot of people don't even know about.
No, I know. And I you know, when I was looking through your collection, I mean, recent albums as well. Quite a few. Yeah, they're still coming.
Yeah. I mean, I've lost track really. I think I must have made about 25 studio albums. I must have done, maybe more. I don't know. But there are a lot of collaborations and a lot of compilations, you know. But for the completists, they're probably going to want everything, which is nice.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you, Gordon.
Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you for your time.
One more question I've got is, if we've got any listeners, and they're probably going to be younger ones, looking at their career in the future, and they fancy a career in the music industry, what advice would you give them?
Well, my advice is set aside logic. Okay, I'm not talking about the software. I'm talking about the logical approach to life and what you want to do with it. Set aside logic, because logic will tell you time and time again you should knock this on the head, because there are easier ways to make a living. And also, when you put yourself in the public domain, your shoulders are going to be pretty broad to accept criticism, and it's going to hurt a lot. But if you believe in what you're doing, and that still voice in your head says that you can't do anything else, you must do this, it's called desire, then you'll be successful in whatever field you want to do. It doesn't mean you're going to become famous. It doesn't mean you're going to become a rock star. But if you can just make a living out of something you love, no matter what it is, then that's going to be a bonus, because life is too short to do stuff that you don't want to do and you're not happy with. I've been blessed, truly blessed, to do something I love for a living, which is really just a hobby. It started out as a hobby, and it still is to a degree. It's just that I make a living out of it, and I have the desire to keep making more and making better records and move forward, and still be able to play the guitar as well as I did when I wrote Heartsong. And still try to play with the same energy I had when I was 25. Which is very difficult when you're 77, but thank God the fingers still work okay, you know, so you have to, you know, be thankful and move forward.
Well, Gordon, I mean, that's very inspirational, the very inspirational advice there for anybody listening, and lovely thing to say at the end. And so I'll put all the details of your website on the show notes, which will obviously include the new album releases, the re-released albums, and also the box sets, and also the details about the auction coming up in June. So, Gordon, thank you ever so much for your time, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Right. Thank you, Bob. Bye for now. Thank you.
You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.